Welcome back to the channel. These stories are meant for late nights, quiet rooms, and headphones on. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from tonight. Now, let's begin the first story. People assume magic is about fireballs, ghosts, or cheap party tricks. They imagine danger as something sudden, a flash, a scream, a body on the floor. But the oldest magic is quieter. It doesn't kill you outright. It rearranges you, piece by piece, thought by thought, until one day you wake up and realize the person who made your choices yesterday is no longer the same person who opens their eyes today. My name is Adrian Vale, or at least that is what remains of him. I used to lecture at Blackthorn University, teaching comparative myth and pre-Christian ritual history, a dusty discipline, a forgotten corner of scholarship, exactly where forbidden things tend to hide. It started with a delivery. No sender, no invoice, just a wooden crate left outside the faculty archive after closing hours. Security assumed it was part of a delayed shipment. They logged it and wheeled it inside. By morning, it sat on my desk because I was the only one whose research tag matched restricted religious artifacts. The crate smelled like cold stone and old smoke. Inside was a book. Not leather, not cloth, something else. Smooth, slightly warm. The surface stretched too tight across the spine. My fingers recoiled before my mind registered why. Skin. Treated. Preserved. Human. There was no title, only a symbol pressed into the cover, a circle cut by a vertical line. The sight of it made my teeth ache. I should have reported it, handed it to the ethics board, locked it away. Instead, I opened it. The pages were brittle but intact, ink written in a careful hand that predated printing presses, margins filled with notes in newer handwriting, Latin, Greek, something older still. The book cataloged rituals that civilized religions had buried, blood rites, memory theft, dream binding. And then I saw it. The rite of severance. A spell said to divide the soul into separate aspects, one to bear pain and guilt, one to pursue perfection without burden. It was framed as philosophical liberation. The old text claimed kings had used it to rule without conscience, priests to achieve divine clarity, warriors to fight without fear. It read like mythology, except there were diagrams, measurements, materials, timings, precise instructions, as though the writer expected someone someday to try. I told myself I was studying it academically. That was a lie. The truth was simpler. I was tired. I carried regrets I couldn't bury, failures, relationships ruined by ambition, a younger brother I hadn't spoken to in years, a mother whose calls I ignored until they stopped coming. I wanted to be better, cleaner, unburdened. The ritual offered exactly that. Preparation took weeks. The ritual required a mirror tall enough to reflect the full body. No ordinary mirror would do. It had to be darkened, reflective but not glass. I commissioned a sheet of polished black obsidian from a geological supplier under the excuse of museum display research. It arrived heavy as a coffin lid. The location had to be silent. No windows, no external light, no interference. I chose the abandoned astronomy basement beneath the old science hall, sealed since a fire decades earlier. No power, no plumbing, only stone corridors and forgotten rooms. I carried the mirror myself, step by careful step. Candles were placed at cardinal points, a circle drawn in powdered obsidian mixed with salt, symbols carved into the floor according to the book's diagrams, 2 silver blades, 1 drop of blood drawn from over the heart. I memorized the incantation. 3 words in a dead tongue. Divide, reveal, liberate. The night I performed it, there was no dramatic storm, no howling wind, only silence so complete I could hear my heartbeat. At midnight, I stood before the mirror. I pressed the blade against my chest, not deep, just enough to draw a single drop. It fell into the powdered circle. The candles flickered, the air tightened. I spoke the words. The temperature dropped instantly. My breath fogged, the mirror rippled like water struck by a stone, and my reflection moved. Not a trick of light, not imagination. It smiled when I did not. It tilted its head with curiosity, like a creature studying its creator. Then it stepped forward. The surface of the mirror bent around it, swallowing and releasing as though it were passing through liquid. And suddenly, I was not alone. He stood before me, identical, same posture, same scar above the eyebrow, but different in a way that bypassed appearance and struck instinct. His eyes were brighter, sharper, empty of hesitation. He looked around the room, then back at me. "Thank you," he said, "for freeing me." Before I could speak, a wave of dizziness hit me. I staggered. Something inside me loosened like knots being untied. Memories dimmed at the edges. A relief washed through me so strong it felt like peace. When I looked up again, he was already walking toward the door. I tried to call out. My voice came thin. "Wait." He paused, hand on the handle. "We are no longer the same. You kept what you could not bear. I kept what you could not control." He left. The door closed, and I collapsed. The days that followed felt unreal. I woke in my apartment bed with no memory of leaving the basement. My clothes smelled of candle smoke. My chest bore a fresh scar. I told myself I had dreamed it, until the forgetting began. I opened my phone and saw missed calls from a name I did not recognize. "Call your brother," the message read. Brother? I stared at the contact photo. A young man smiling beside me at a beach. I had no memory of him. Panic rose. I walked to the bathroom mirror. My reflection stared back. Ordinary, exhausted, but when I looked away and back again, I thought I saw a delay. A half second of independent movement. A smile flickering and vanishing. That night I dreamed of myself walking city streets, wearing my coat, talking to strangers, laughing easily, no hesitation, no fear. In the dream, I watched him enter a bar. Someone bumped into him. Words were exchanged. The stranger fell, blood on the floor. I woke, gasping. My knuckles were bruised. I began to search for him. University records showed I had been teaching classes I didn't remember attending. Emails sent from my account I did not recall writing. Students spoke of a new energy in my lectures, a confidence, a sharpness. I watched from the back of a hallway as he exited my office wearing my jacket, greeting colleagues with easy charm. No one questioned it. Why would they? To them, he was Adrian Vale, and I was becoming a shadow. I confronted him one evening in the empty lecture hall. He smiled when he saw me. "You're fading," he said. "I'm using my life," I whispered. "Our life," he corrected. "You shed what you could not bear. I kept what you could not control." I realized then what the ritual truly did. It had not created a copy, it had cut me in two, and the stronger half had taken the world. I tried to reverse the ritual. The basement was sealed again, the circle washed away, the book gone from the archive, no trace in inventory, no shipment record, as though it had never arrived. I returned home to find my apartment occupied, my clothes rearranged, my papers edited, a half-finished cup of tea still warm. He sat at my desk. "Running will make you weaker," he said without turning. Fear finally broke through shock. I left that night with only what I could carry. Since then, I have lived in forgotten places, abandoned stations,
empty apartments. I watch from the distance as he continues my life, publishing papers, teaching students, smiling in photographs. But sometimes I see cracks, moments when his reflection lingers too long, when his eyes go dark for no reason, when something inside him twitches against its cage, because he is not whole, and neither am I. The book said two halves cannot remain apart forever. One must consume the other. One must become complete. And when that day comes, one of us will vanish. I do not know which, but I know this: the mirror still exists, and the ritual is not finished.
I learned to live like a ghost. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that I would find a way to undo the ritual, reclaim what was stolen, and return to my old life. But days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the world moved on without me. My bank card stopped working, my university email locked me out, my apartment lease transferred fully to him. On paper, I didn't exist anymore. I slept in forgotten places, empty lecture halls after midnight, storage rooms beneath train platforms. Once I spent 3 nights in a condemned theater, listening to the wind whistle through torn velvet curtains. I watched him from a distance. He flourished. My name appeared in academic journals, interviews, conferences. He spoke eloquently about ethics, consciousness, identity. People admired his clarity, his confidence, the way he never stumbled over words like I used to. Students adored him. Colleagues envied him. No one suspected the truth. Sometimes I wondered if I had made the wrong choice. Maybe the world didn't need the burdened half of me. Maybe I was the unnecessary part, the flaw that should have been left behind. But then I saw what he did when no one watched. Late at night, he walked alone through empty streets. He'd stop at a stray animal and stare too long. Once I saw him kneel beside a homeless man asleep on a bench. He didn't speak, just watched, studied, like a scientist examining a specimen. There was something predatory in him now, something that had never existed in me, or perhaps had, buried deep, waiting for permission. I realized the ritual didn't just free him from guilt. It freed him from empathy. One night, I returned to the basement beneath the science hall. I needed answers, and if the book had vanished, maybe something else remained. The corridors smelled of mold and dust. My flashlight beam trembled across peeling paint and scorch marks from the old fire. When I reached the ritual room, my heart dropped. The circle was gone, cleaned, scrubbed as if it had never existed. But the mirror remained. The obsidian slab stood against the wall, covered in a cloth. I pulled it away with shaking hands. My reflection stared back, hollow-eyed, thin, weaker than I remembered. Behind me in the mirror, another figure appeared. Him. He stepped through without rippling this time, as though the mirror no longer resisted him. "You came back," he said. "I knew you would." I wanted to run, but my legs refused. "You're afraid," he said, circling me slowly. "You feel it, don't you? The imbalance. Two halves cannot exist separately. The soul demands unity." "You'll consume me," I whispered. "Yes," he said simply, "or you'll consume me. Either way, there will only be one." I backed away until I hit the wall. "You're not human anymore." He smiled. "I am more human than you. I have ambition without fear, will without doubt, desire without restraint. I am what you wished to be." "I never wished to be a monster." He stepped closer. "You wished to be free." The candles around the room ignited on their own, flames cold and blue. Shadows twisted along the walls. The air grew heavy. "I didn't come to fight you," he said. "I came to finish what we started." The mirror pulsed behind him, dark as deep water.
If you step through, he said, the division ends. We reunite. One soul. Whole. Perfect. I knew what he wasn't saying. If I stepped through, I wouldn't emerge. He would. I ran. Not out of fear, out of instinct. The same instinct that makes an animal flee a predator's jaws. I fled the basement, up stairwells, through empty corridors, into the night air. I didn't stop until my lungs burned and the city blurred around me. I collapsed beneath a highway overpass, shivering. That night, I dreamed of the mirror. In the dream, I stood before it, and my reflection spoke with my voice. You cannot run forever, it said. Every thought you have, I feel. Every fear, every plan, we are still connected. I woke with blood on my tongue. I had bitten it in my sleep. Days passed. I grew weaker. Hunger gnawed constantly, but food tasted like ash. My hands trembled. My reflection in puddles sometimes showed his face instead of mine. I realized something terrifying. He wasn't just hunting me physically. He was pulling me back. The ritual had tied us together. Distance didn't matter. Hiding didn't matter. Eventually, one half would draw the other in. I needed an advantage. I searched abandoned libraries, occult forums, forgotten footnotes in academic texts, any mention of soul division, mirror rites, identity spells. Weeks later, I found a reference in a medieval manuscript translation buried in a digital archive. The divided self may be restored only through the naming of the severed aspect. That which lacks a name cannot hold form. Speak the true name and the false self will unravel. A true name, not Adrian, something older, something formed in the ritual. I remembered the book's margin notes, the hand that had written instructions centuries before. They had given the severed half a name, not written in plain sight, but hidden within the symbols. I had seen it once, briefly. It came to me in a whisper while I slept. Annameth. I woke knowing it was correct. I returned to the basement on the next new moon. The mirror waited. He waited. You came, he said, stepping forward. At last. I stood within the old circle's faded outline. I know your name, I said. His smile faltered for the first time. You don't have a name. You are the severed will, the freed hunger, the unburdened half. But even you were born in that ritual. You were given form and a name. His eyes sharpened. Speak it, he said, softly. The candles flickered wildly. The room shook. If I speak it, I said, you lose your claim to this form, to this life, to me. He stepped closer, towering over me. You won't survive it, he said. You're too weak. Maybe, I said, but neither will you. I drew a small blade across my palm. Blood dripped onto the floor. The circle reawakened, glowing faintly beneath the grime. The mirror roared like an ocean storm. I took a breath. Annameth. The sound hit the room like a shockwave. He screamed, his body warped, stretching, splitting, cracking like porcelain. His face flickered between mine and something else, something raw and unfinished. You cannot name me, he shrieked. I am you. You are what I released, I said. Now return. I spoke the name again. Annameth. The mirror shattered. Black shards flew like blades. The air filled with light and darkness at once. Pain tore through me, every nerve burning. I felt something slam into my chest. Not flesh, essence, will, memory, hunger. And then silence. I woke in the basement, alone. The mirror was gone. Only dust and broken stone remained. The candles burned down to stubs. My hand no longer bled. I stood. My legs were steady. My reflection in a piece of broken glass showed my face. Just one face. Just one pair of eyes. But behind them, something stirred. Not hunger, not cruelty, but knowledge. Memory of what I had been and what I had unleashed. I was whole again. But I was not the man who began this journey, because I remembered both halves now, the fear, the guilt, and the cold clarity, the ambition, the power. Both lived within me, balanced for now. I left the city. I no longer teach, no longer publish, no longer seek forbidden texts. I live quietly, far from mirrors, far from crowds. But sometimes, when I stand in still water, I see my reflection smile a fraction too slow, and I remember the truth. The ritual did not destroy him. It absorbed him. He is part of me now, a whisper in the back of my mind, a shadow behind my thoughts, waiting. And if I ever grow careless again, if I ever crave power without cost, he will rise. Because the soul remembers division, and unity is never permanent.
Some people spend their lives restoring the past. I used to be one of them. My name is Rowan Hale, and until last year, I worked as a conservation specialist at the Ashford Museum of Cultural History, a quiet place tucked between an old river and a neglected industrial district. My job was simple in theory: clean artifacts, preserve them, give forgotten objects a second life behind glass cases. I never believed in curses, not really. I believed in chemistry, humidity control, archival inks, and careful hands. The past was dead. My job was to keep it from crumbling. That belief ended the day the crate arrived. No shipping label, no paperwork, no sender information, just a heavy wooden box sealed with dark red wax and a single word carved into the lid: Verith. I assumed it was part of a private donation mistakenly delivered without documentation. It happens sometimes. So I signed it in, logged it as unregistered artifact, and carried it to my workroom. The moment I touched it, I felt a chill crawl up my arms. Not fear exactly, more like the sensation of walking into a room where someone had just stopped talking. Inside the crate was a velvet-lined case. Inside the case was the needle. It was longer than any sewing needle, nearly the length of my hand, forged from something blacker than metal. Not shiny, not dull, just wrong. Thin red veins ran through it like capillaries beneath skin. No rust, no dust, no sign it had ever aged. I should have called my supervisor. Instead, I locked the lab door and stared at it for an hour. Because the longer I looked, the more it felt like the needle was studying me back. That night, I dreamed of a desert, a circle drawn in ash, a woman kneeling in the center, her hair braided with bone charms. In her hand was the same needle. In front of her lay a small figure molded from wax. She spoke a language I didn't understand, but I understood what happened next. She pressed the needle into the wax. Somewhere far away, a man screamed. I woke drenched in sweat, and on my wrist was a small red ring, perfectly circular, like a burn that had already healed. I told myself stress caused the dream, overwork, too much coffee, nothing supernatural, but the needle did not let me forget it. During the day, while I cleaned pottery shards or cataloged old coins, I felt it in the locked cabinet behind me, a faint pressure at the base of my skull, a taste of metal on my tongue. By the fourth night, the dreams returned. The same woman, closer this time, her face still hidden beneath a veil. The shadows behind her moved like living things. When she spoke,
I didn't hear words. I felt them, pushing, suggesting, inviting. When I woke, I found the cabinet door unlocked. The needle lay on my work table, pointed toward me. I took it home. I wish I could say I resisted, that I reported it, that I destroyed it, but the truth is simpler. I wanted to understand it. I told myself I would research it safely, that I was trained for handling dangerous artifacts, that knowledge was better than ignorance. I placed it in a drawer in my apartment bedroom. That was when the whispers began. Not voices, not hallucinations, more like thoughts that weren't mine, sliding gently into my mind when I lay in the dark. He took credit for your work. She laughed when your proposal was rejected. They walk over you because you let them. Faces came with the thoughts. Old professors, museum administrators. One name returned more than any other. Director Marla Kent. She had denied my promotion twice. She reassigned my projects once. She published a restoration paper using my notes without adding my name. I told myself I didn't hate her, but the whispers knew better. A week later, I found a book. Not in the museum library, not in any database. It simply appeared on my desk one morning between my laptop and coffee mug. The cover was cracked leather. The title was written in ink that shimmered like oil. The Doctrine of Binding. Inside was a chapter marked with a pressed black feather. The needle rights of the listening ones. I read until my vision blurred. The needle was not a tool. It was a key, a conduit, an invitation. It described a figure from pre-classical myth, a weaver of pain, a collector of suffering, a spirit that answered only when called through intent, not prayer. The ritual was simple. A wax figure, a name spoken clearly, a single drop of blood, a single puncture. The text ended with one line. The curse begins only when the bearer chooses. That was the part that broke me, because until then, nothing had happened without my consent. The dreams, the whispers, the presence, all waiting for me. The final push came 3 nights later. I came home to find my apartment door open. Inside, every light was off, every mirror covered in condensation though no water ran. The air smelled of iron. On my bed lay the needle. Beside it, the corpse of my cat. No blood spilled, no wound visible, just empty eyes staring upward. I screamed until my throat burned. The whispers did not comfort me this time. They commanded, use it, invite it, take back what was stolen. I held the needle in shaking fingers. It was warm now, almost alive. I made the wax figure. My hands worked without conscious thought, guided by instructions I somehow already knew. The wax softened under my palms, took shape, head, torso, arms, legs. When I finished, the figure looked vaguely human. I set it on the floor. I spoke her name, Marla Kent. My voice sounded strange, like someone else spoke through me. I pricked my finger. One drop of blood fell on the wax chest. The needle pulsed. I pressed it into the figure's heart. The lights in my apartment exploded. Every bulb shattered at once. Glass rained down. The air rushed inward like a vacuum. And then everything stopped. Silence. Stillness. The wax figure remained on the floor. The needle lay beside it. Nothing else. The next morning, the news reported that director Marla Kent had collapsed during a board meeting. Heart failure, sudden, no prior condition. Shock, tragedy, warning statements from colleagues. No one suspected me. No one could. I expected guilt. Instead, I felt calm, centered, like something inside me had been satisfied. That night, the woman in the veil returned in my dream, but this time she stood beside me, not across from me. and in her hand the needle gleamed.
After Marla Kent died, the world treated it like tragedy. At the museum, staff gathered in the main hall beneath the hanging whale skeleton. People whispered. Some cried. Others quietly calculated who might replace her. No one looked at me twice. Why would they? I was just Rowan Hale, the quiet conservator in the basement lab, the woman who cleaned artifacts while others took credit for discoveries. Except now, something had changed. I walked through the halls differently, straighter, lighter, as if a weight I never knew I carried had been lifted from my spine. People noticed. They smiled at me more, listened when I spoke, offered condolences as though I too had lost something. In a way, I had. Because that night when I returned home, I realized I no longer felt alone inside my own thoughts. The woman in the veil appeared in every dream, but no longer distant, no longer across a ritual circle. She stood at my side, like a shadow cast by my body. When she spoke, her voice blended with mine, soft, familiar, comforting. You invited me. You gave me purpose. We will never be powerless again. I wanted to argue, to tell her she wasn't real, that she was only a hallucination born from guilt and grief. But every time I tried, the needle on my bedside table pulsed warmly, like a heart that beat in rhythm with my own. The second incident happened 2 weeks later. A man followed me home from the subway. I noticed him 3 blocks before my building. Hood up, hands in pockets, always the same distance behind. I sped up. He sped up. I crossed the street. He crossed too. By the time I reached my apartment door, his footsteps were close enough that I could smell cigarette smoke and cheap cologne. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. I slipped inside and locked it fast, leaned against the wood, breathing hard. Then I heard it, his footsteps stopping outside. A pause, a hand on the knob, a slow turn. The lock held, for now. The whispers returned, not in dreams this time, in waking thought. Use it. Invite protection. One prick. I backed away from the door. My legs carried me to the bedroom without conscious choice. The needle lay where I left it, black and waiting. I didn't make a wax figure this time. I didn't need to. I just spoke one word. Stop. And I pressed the needle into my own palm. Pain flared white hot. Blood ran down my wrist. The needle drank eagerly. Outside, the footsteps scrambled away, fast, panicked, fleeing. I opened the door a minute later. No one there. Only a single wet footprint on the floor mat, pointed inward. After that, the line between my will and hers blurred. If someone insulted me, I felt the needle hum. If someone raised their voice, the whispers stirred. If I felt threatened, the needle grew warm in my pocket like a loyal animal ready to bite. I stopped pretending I controlled it. The truth was simpler. It listened, and it acted. The mirror was the next sign. I first noticed it while brushing my teeth. My reflection blinked half a second slower than I did. A tiny delay, barely noticeable, but once seen, impossible to ignore. In store windows, in dark phone screens, in polished metal surfaces, my reflection sometimes smiled when I did not. The woman in the veil was no longer only in dreams. She was in the glass, wearing my face. I tried to fight back. I returned to the museum archives, dug through restricted collections, called in old favors with professors who owed me quiet access to forbidden texts. I found a passage in a crumbling manuscript older than the one that had appeared on my desk. It was a counterwrite, a reversal. The listening one may be banished only when the needle tastes the heart of its bearer. Not metaphor, not symbolic, literal. I had to invite the curse fully, accept it completely, then seal it shut with my own blood. It was the only way. I prepared the ritual in my apartment,
Salt lines across every door and window, black candles at cardinal points, mirrors covered, phone off, lights out. In the center of the living room, I drew a circle in ash and ground chalk. Inside it, I placed the needle. At midnight, the air grew heavy, thick, like water. The woman appeared without the dream this time. She stepped out of the darkness itself. Tall, veiled, her body made of moving shadow. Beneath the veil, I saw flashes of mouths, eyes, teeth, all whispering at once. "You made me. You fed me. You are mine." I stepped into the circle. My heart hammered against my ribs. I picked up the needle. It pulsed with joy. "This ends tonight," I said. The whispers screamed. The room shook, candles bent sideways, salt scattered across the floor. She lunged. I drove the needle into my own chest. Pain beyond description, every nerve burning, every memory tearing, every heartbeat splitting like cracking glass. The woman shrieked, not from outside, from inside me. Visions flooded my mind, ancient deserts, bone circles, endless rituals across centuries, a chain of cursed hands passing the needle forward, all of them consumed, all of them vessels. I saw myself among them, another link, another name added to the chain. I screamed and pushed the needle deeper. Blood filled my mouth, my lungs, my thoughts. And then, silence. I awoke in a hospital bed. White walls, machines beeping, bandages across my chest. A doctor told me I'd been found unconscious by a neighbor who heard a crash, that I'd lost massive blood, that my heart had stopped for almost 2 minutes. 2 minutes. But I was alive. They called it a miracle. They didn't see the wax figure sitting on my bedside table. They didn't see the black needle resting beside it. They didn't hear the whisper curling behind my thoughts like smoke. "You sealed the door, but I am still inside, waiting." I quit the museum, moved to a small town far from cities and universities. No mirrors in the house, no glass, no metal surfaces left uncovered. I avoid needles, pins, even sewing kits. I sleep with the lights on. But sometimes, late at night, I feel a warm pressure in my chest, like something shifting, listening, waiting for the moment my will falters. Because curses like this don't end. They only sleep. And one day, someone else will open a crate with no shipping label. They will see a needle too black to be metal, and they will feel the same whisper I did. "Invite me."